Good afternoon and welcome back to Law and Crime Trial Network. I'm your host, Brian Buckmeyer. Now we've got a great case for you, that being the McArthur case. It appears that the prosecution has put on a case. The defense has come back and said that the defendant will not testify, which I believe our former guest, Milton Flores, had rightfully guessed. And now the prosecution is putting on their rebuttal evidence. So we are joined with a group of guests, great guests here. We have Bernarda here in studio. We have Judge Birmingham online as well, Michelle online as well. Good afternoon to all of you.
Afternoon.
Now we'll start in the studio.
You too.
We'll start in the studio. Bernarda, case has almost come to a close. We're all kind of thinking, hey, it's a long weekend. Maybe this will all get tied in before Friday. What do you expect from this case as the evidence has come in so far?
Oh, the prosecution has a very strong case. I mean, even though it's circumstantial as opposed to a direct evidence case, the circumstantial evidence is enormous. You have the body being found close to the area of the defendant's family farm. You have her going to Home Depot the next day, getting concrete and also purchasing pottery, which was actually used to bury the deceased. You have the cell site records. You have her ex-girlfriend saying that the last time that she saw her, she was actually with the defendant. The evidence is enormous. I think it's going to be a quick verdict, less than an hour.
I would agree. Now Michelle, will come to you. It's circumstantial evidence. Bernarda's hit the nail on the head with that. But there's no direct evidence. There's no smoking gun. But there's so much that would make you kind of think, is there anything here for the defense attorney to really work with?
Listen, I am normally team defense. I am normally always, there's got to be a defense. But I think Bernarda hit it on the head. I mean, there's the circumstantial evidence is just overwhelming. And I know that the defense is, I didn't do it. She didn't do it. You know, she's not testifying, which I think is a smart idea because that would have opened her up to cross-examination. And I don't know if she would have been able to withstand that. But it is all the things that are leading up to this moment. You know, the victim was, the last time they heard from the victim, it was with her. The visit to Home Depot, her body being near or around, the family property. And I know that, she could say, of course, well, we were horseback riding and after she left, I don't know what happened. But is that reasonable to believe, especially with all of the other evidence and the issues surrounding the case, the money that was involved with this case. And normally, like I said, I'm usually team defense, but I don't know how they're going to be able to pull out a not guilty in this one.
Michelle, I'm usually in the same boat with you as a public defender here in New York City. I'm usually team defense, but I'm struggling to see where the defense can pull this out. Let me try my best with the judge. Judge Birmingham, hear me out here. What if this is just a case of eeny, meeny, miny, McArthur? It's a situation where they just found the best person to pin it on. I mean, there's enough facts here that make you think it could have been them, but kind of as the defense is saying, they being the police officers, didn't really do their due diligence and maybe should have looked elsewhere instead of her. Does that fly in court?
It has before. I mean, there's different ways to defend a murder case. One's to say I didn't do it. One's to say, self-defense or insanity. And the other one is just to say that the proof isn't strong enough, that there is reasonable doubt. And that that's worked in cases, from O.J. Simpson, and maybe it's going to work here. I really don't know. I think that the connections between those pieces of circumstantial evidence are indeed quite powerful. I also do think it's interesting that the prosecutors are putting on a rebuttal case. I know that when I used to prosecute cases, once the defense would put evidence on, that narrowed the argument. And that narrowed the playing field. And if I had something to rebut what they were saying, well, then usually, the case was in the bag.
Yeah, I think the four of us, whether we like it or not, are all on the same page here with the evidence that's being presented. Let's look back and see what other information was presented at court, specifically kind of what the judge is hinting at, the evidence as to where and how the body was found. Let's take a look. So just another coincidence or another nail in the coffin for McArthur? How can it go? Either way, it depends on how the different lawyers interpret this and how the jury actually grasp it. Judge Birmingham, I mean, how many times do you see a Home Depot employee, one, in Home Depot, two, in actual court testifying that, hey, all the materials you found with the body, that's what I sold this lady like days within the death of this person?
Well, it's a testament to some pretty thorough investigation, I think. And that's the common sense type, good old-fashioned police work that I think jurors really like. I mean, we talk a lot about DNA, and there's probably some really impressive phone records that have been put in. And I noticed that they're going to do some Celebrite analysis here on rebuttal. But I mean, this good old fashioned just figuring it out and going back to the scene where they might have sold these instruments to help cover up, and the police found it, and lo and behold, there she is on video, and there's no reasonable explanation for it. And I do think it's just another layer that it's fast setting concrete, that this is something that she wanted to be done quickly. That implies that she knew she needed to work fast. So it's very powerful evidence.
I mean, Michelle, I understand why defendants don't testify. There are so many reasons why you can do that. I mean, the power of a prosecutor cross-examining them, they might mix up their words, or maybe they're truly not innocent and they can't testify, or they're fearful, they're anxious, all these different things. But I would have loved to have heard something to the effect, if she could have said, hey man, I was trying to build a flower bed in the backyard. I was trying to do a herb garden or something. Like, there's an innocent reason to this, but without that innocent explanation, what's left in the jury's mind?
You know, as much as we can prepare and prep jurors in jury selection that you may not need to hear, you may not hear from our clients, and that you don't need to hold that against them, in cases like this, they're going to hold that against them. You know, there has been no explanation as to why she had the concrete that was fast setting, that she had the pottery, the potting soil, and all of those kinds of things. And so in a juror's mind, I can't help but, as much as we want to believe that they're going to not hold it against your client, in certain cases, these kinds of cases where there's no innocent explanation, I guarantee that they're going to hold that against her. They're going to say, we didn't hear why she had this. We didn't hear what this was using for. We didn't hear from her. But I think that this is a case that she probably can't testify. And if she does, the cross-examination would be visceral coming from the prosecution.
Now, Bernarda, in this type of case, is it interesting to see the defendant's background in terms of criminal investigations and the fact that she worked in a law enforcement background and now she's being prosecuted, and there's some concepts and aspects to this crime that does involve a level of sophistication, that being like the burying of the body, the quick drying cement. Does that hurt her because she's got that experience in her back pocket?
In this case, absolutely, because one thing is that the defense argued in their opening statement that you're not going to find DNA evidence, you're not going to find fingerprints. But she's a crime scene tech, a former crime scene tech, so she will know how to clean it up. She will know how to cover it up, so it works against her in this type of case.
Absolutely agree. We actually got some video live in court now as to whether or not there should be a mistrial, because there was a picture shown of McArthur with a gun being held in her hand. All right, so while the judge takes a moment to deliberate as to whether or not there would be a mistrial, we're going to take just a short break and be back with more on Law&Crime Trial Network.